Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson at 3 and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with my buddy Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money. We are live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms, on the socials too. And tonight, stay tuned tonight at 6 for Winning with Winans. I'll be back on the air at 6 this evening with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans at winansinvestments.com. Well, happy crypto week, coming off a record-shattering week for stocks and for Bitcoin. Stocks saw a seesaw session today, ended higher, with the NASDAQ hitting an all-time high today. Bitcoin continued on its record-shattering roll. It's shooting above 123,000 today to all-time highs before pulling back. Bitcoin reaching a record high as investors look to a busy week for crypto legislation in Washington, with the spotlight on crypto turning to the nation's capital. We see Bitcoin jumped as high as 123,166. That's an all-time high for Bitcoin, and then cooled a bit, but was still trading above 120,000 here, 123.12 at last check. All this as the House of Representatives takes on crypto legislation. In fact, 3 crypto-related pieces of legislation starting tomorrow, though they focus on stablecoin regulation, shifting crypto jurisdiction to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and outlawing a Fed-issued central bank digital currency before one is even established. We'll, of course, be following all these developments throughout the week with various experts that'll be live with us here on this program. The stock market, meanwhile, saw gains with the NASDAQ hitting an all-time high. The tech-heavy NASDAQ shrugging off the renewed trade tensions that was in the news today. Also a key inflation report that will be coming out first thing tomorrow morning. The Dow came in for a closing gain of 88 points, settling at 44,560. The S&P 500 up 9 at 6,268. That index hit a record high last week and is near its all-time high now. The NASDAQ, though, up double nickels on the board, 55 points higher at 20,640. That is a record closing high for the NASDAQ composite. We'll be taking a closer look at all of the cryptos this hour. Ethereum hovering above 3,000, Solana back above 160, and Doge at the moment at 19 cents. President Trump said over the weekend the U.S. will impose 30% tariffs on goods from the EU and Mexico starting August 1st. That, of course, rattled the markets early on. The EU and Mexico now pushing to continue negotiations with the U.S. in hopes of getting a lower rate via some sort of a new trade deal. We'll also be watching inflation numbers this week. The consumer inflation report set to come out tomorrow, the June CPI report. And investors will be looking for signs on how earlier rounds of tariffs are impacting prices across the board. So far, prices have held pretty steady. In fact, have even come down since the tariffs were announced. President Trump also ratcheting up tensions now with Russia over the war in Ukraine, threatening to impose tariffs of up to 100% on Russia. He also said the U.S. would provide weapons to Ukraine. Investors showing interest in IPO activity, also merger and acquisition activity. Wells Fargo reports after being freed from a decade of stringent regulatory, stocks edged higher to kick off the week, including Wells Fargo. We'll be taking a closer look at the bank stocks. And also we're watching closer to home what's happening here with home sales sluggish, home building and house prices poised to plummet too, according to Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics. The housing market could stall the U.S. economy. Mark Zandi seems to think so, and we'll take a closer look at that story as well. The new homeless count, meanwhile, for Los Angeles County has just been released. We'll get an update on homelessness and crime with the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former L.A. City Council member, longtime LAPD sergeant with 50-plus years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis ZINE will be joining me on the line later this hour. Trump administration appealing an L.A. federal judge's order limiting the ability of federal agents to detain people without reasonable suspicion beyond their race, ethnicity, or occupation. President Trump has given total authorization to federal immigration agents to protect themselves, meanwhile, after a series of clashes with protesters in Southern California, including enforcement raids on 2 California cannabis farms last week. I'll discuss the latest on that front with Ira Melman, spokesman with the Federation for American Immigration Reform, also known as FAIR. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, Bitcoin, and the whole works now. Joining us live, Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for taking the call here on a record-shattering day for tech stocks and for Bitcoin.
That's right, Frank. You know, the big gains have been companies tied to the AI and Bitcoin themes, interestingly. But the month of July tends to be the very best month for stocks in a president's first year. And we're only 2 weeks in, but it looks like July is going to be a winner once again. On the other hand, the market almost never peaks in June. We get that June swoon. For the record, since 1950, June's never seen a peak. But the S&P 500 has been up 9 years in a row in July, 11 of the past 12 years. These winning streaks are pretty normal for this month. The past 10 years alone, July has been the second best month on average, with only November doing better with the Santa Claus rally and the year-end rush. But summer stock market rallies are influenced by a number of factors, as you know, Frank. There's economic indications, there's corporate earnings, those have been strong, but there's also market sentiment. Investor psychology plays a big role, with optimism leading more investors to enter the market. We do not have that right now. We have negative, extremely negative market sentiment. So we're climbing that classic wall of worry.
On the air live with the one and only Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. It's Crypto Week, so happy Crypto Week to you, Gabriel Wisdom, with the focus of attention on Washington. Could be a big week for crypto one way or the other, depending on what develops, but certainly with a pro-crypto administration in place and many lawmakers now coming around on crypto on the regulatory front. What's your reaction to Bitcoin hitting an all-time high here, bringing the crypto-related stocks along for the ride?
You know, there's no denying that Bitcoin is under accumulation around the world. Even the Vanguard Group owns a significant position in Bitcoin. Vanguard executives have a fairly long history of saying negative things about Bitcoin, saying that there's no inherent economic value, that it could wreak havoc on portfolios, urging investors to stay away from crypto. But now, one of the world's largest money management firms, $10 trillion in management, they hold some 8% of all the MicroStrategy stock. It's now called Strategy. This is a software firm that owns 70 billion of Bitcoin tokens. Strategy provides AI-powered solutions for industries worldwide, but their CEO, Michael Saylor, decided in 2020 he was going to take the firm's capital, even issue debt to buy more Bitcoin, and now is a major Bitcoin holder. And so you've got an index fund, which Vanguard is known for. The index buys the entire cap-weighted market. You have to own all the stocks, whether you love them or you hate them. And so Vanguard is a significant holder of Bitcoin.
That's very interesting, and certainly things continue to evolve. On the House Financial Services Committee, which was previously chaired by Democrat-Republican Southern California, Democratic Representative Maxine Waters, she chaired the House Financial Services Committee for many years. She is very much speaking out against crypto and the legislation that's going to be presented this week. On the flip side, the new chair of the House Financial Services Committee, Republican from Arkansas, French Hill, appears to be very much warmed up to the idea of this new crypto legislation. So even on that committee, there's a clash of philosophy on crypto. So it'll be very interesting to hear what's said about crypto from the investment standpoint and from the consumer standpoint. Do you expect all this legislation to go through, and what can we expect here on the crypto price when all is said and done?
I don't know about the price, Frank. It's really a collectible. It doesn't provide anything other than perceived value, and there is value if industries and individuals are willing to take digital tokens instead of government or sovereign currencies in trade for goods and services. Well, that makes it money. but it doesn't generate a whole lot more. That the world is paying attention to this whole digital revolution. Republicans are putting private sector issuers at the center of the digital asset boom. The legislation that you mentioned is a big part of this. The concerns are that this would create significant risk. But in China, for example, they're working toward a digital yuan, the central bank digital currency, which our nation under current administration doesn't want to do. But China is looking to come up with their own a dollar reserve in the form of this digital yuan. So everybody's paying attention to crypto.
The yuan, of course, the national currency of China, and the concern, and of course, it's not surprising in a communist system that they want something like that, because they essentially could control what people buy by simply cutting off their wallets or restricting the purchase of things, and that's a concern here as well.
Well, that's so true, and Xi's government has accelerated the timeline for developing these financial systems that will be independent of the United States and all Western institutions. And of course, our risk here in the United States would be that China, goes with other countries and says the U.S. is not involved in this technology or whatever you're interested in. You don't need to buy a dollar. Saudi Arabia's central bank, for example, is pilot testing a central bank digital currency of their own. And, we've always dealt with petrodollars traded for barrels of oil, but that could change.
Very interesting. And we see gold getting a pop recently, right now hovering at around 3,350, 180. Good old analog gold, turning to analog gold now from digital gold, and silver has hit the highest we've seen in about 14 years, popping above $39 an ounce. That's certainly big news. And platinum has had its big run up this year, above 1,400 here as we speak. What about the traditional metals in the face of all what you just described?
They all look good, assuming that we're going to have a growing world population and expanding economics, which we are. But gold, for example, has always had naysayers. The great economist John Maynard Keynes, for example, a century ago, in fact, it was 100 years ago, in 1925, he said that gold was a barbarous relic and was not meant for central bankers. Back in 1925, gold was $20 an ounce. It's up 170 times. It's 170 times more valuable today. So the economists, can be very, very wrong, and he was. The BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, their central banks have been buying gold in order to hedge.
On there live with Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management, author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Now, we talked to the biggest fans of crypto here, as well as the harshest critics. It sounds like you've come around on crypto in some aspects. Obviously, a lot of skeptics still out there. Gabriel Wisdom, are you touching crypto here and any of the ancillary names, the crypto miners, the ETFs, and so forth?
Frank, it's just very hard to avoid it because, as we mentioned, Vanguard owns more than 20 million shares of MSTR is the symbol. The company was known as MicroStrategy. This is a technology company, an AI solution for industries around the world. But now it's a proxy for Bitcoin with $70 billion of Bitcoin on the balance sheet. That's becoming more and more common with other more traditional companies that want to hedge. So, yeah, you can't ignore it, that's for sure. You can't ignore the risks either of some of these new names. All it takes to create a cryptocurrency is a white paper with a formula that hasn't been used, and then you've got there's one that someone was telling me about the other day called Pi. There's so many, and I'd stick with the majors. Certainly, Bitcoin is the gold standard. What's the platinum?
On the air live with Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management, based right here in Southern California. What about the traditional names here? The Mag 7, NVIDIA actually pulled back today, coming off its all-time high, down 85 cents at 164 and change. Apple down about 250 at 208 or so. What about the Mag 7 names here with the Nasdaq at a record high as we speak?
Well, the Mag 7s, those 7 companies, Frank, have disappointed because it was time. They've had fundamental support from analysts. Analysts are forecasting weaker revenue and earnings growth for the Mag 7, but at the same time, that revenue and earnings growth is better than the rest of the Standard & Poor's 500, the Standard & Poor's 493, the remaining 493. So, at the right price, those Mag 7s would be magnificent yet again because they grow. NVIDIA is already there. I'm fascinated with some of the innovations at NVIDIA. There's this weather forecasting technology I might have mentioned once before called Climate in a Bottle. It's an AI model for forecasting weather years ahead of time. They've also teamed up with Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, and you'll see more of this with NVIDIA. They're partnering for semiconductor plants and semiconductor technology. I think this is fabulous.
All right, and with the markets on a roll right now, and that big beautiful bill in place, a lot of discussion now about new offerings, new IPOs, as well as more M&A activity. What do you see ahead on those fronts?
Well, there's already lots of new deals in the works. If interest rates do come down, well, then we'll see a mergers and acquisitions frenzy. I'm sure. The problem is we've got the political calendar that is just around the corner. The midterm election campaigns will be starting in the not too distant future, and the president needs a very good economy to increase the odds that Republicans would hold on to they're already pretty thin, majorities in the Senate and the House. So the economy right now is in very good shape. So if you mess with it, you run a great risk. Mergers and acquisitions, there's a great deal of interest there. We just don't want to overheat. Will the Federal Reserve remain independent? Well, even if the president is successful in convincing the Fed chairman to resign, you still got to deal with the 11 other members of the Federal Open Market Committee. Even a loyalist would have to, that he might appoint, would have to deal with the other Fed members. And, and then there's the bond market. If the government artificially depresses the cost of money, the bond market will be unforgiving, and the open market interest rates will rise. So it's a tricky time.
All right, before I let you off the hook, looks like the defense names moved higher today. RTX Corp hitting an all-time high, for example, of more than $2 at $149 and change. Given the tensions around the world, not a big surprise that the defense contractors are moving up. What about that sector here?
I like them very much. I mean, we saw what happened in the Middle East, and we saw just a couple of days following the ceasefire in the Middle East, and this is all very, very positive. The technology innovations, AI, have really changed the U.S. aerospace and defense area. That includes GE Aerospace, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. They're all changing, and even the traditional airlines are using a lot of this technology. We saw what happened with Delta's earnings. They've repurposed a lot of grounded airplane parts, including the engines. They've got advanced avionics and automation and AI. I think it's all really positive.
All right. And RTX used to be known as Raytheon. That's certainly a big player for many years on the defense front. Any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Frank, I mentioned the airlines. You've got to be a buyer when everybody's complaining, and they mostly have been complaining about a number of different industries. The airlines, have struggled, And now with Delta's very strong year to date, up I think 30% year to date off the bottom, and these innovations in the repurposing of airplane parts. There's an exchange traded fund that I'm looking at. The trading symbol is JETS, Jets. And then the home builders, you talked about the sagging real estate markets. 2/3 of the nation's real estate markets are in decline. The home builders look interesting to me, and you can own most of the big ones in an exchange traded fund with the symbol NAIL. That would be nail.
Love those clever ticker symbols you always provide for us. Gabriel, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us as always. Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management, based here in Southern California. The book, Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank.
And out to the freeways now, 790 KBC. Winning day for tech stocks with the NASDAQ closing at a record high in Bitcoin, kissing a record high today above 123,000. Right now, it's back below 120,000, 119,824 here at last check. The Dow came in for a closing gain of 88, the S&P 500 up 9, NASDAQ up 55 to a record high close, 20,640. The VIX index, the volatility index, moving up 5%. The yield in the 10-year note now at 4.44%. Gold at $3,351 and change. Silver popping to a 14-year high today, above $39 an ounce, just below that now. And platinum at $1,416 and change. And now the latest news in 790 KBC.
Hello, my loves. It's Lala Kent. Yes, that Lala. And if you're not listening to the Give Them Lala podcast, here's what you're missing out on.
I stayed with my 2 kids. Mom and Kristen shared a room, and you and Landon shared a room. What the hell is going on? A lesbian couple, a gay couple, and then this
random woman with 2 kids.
So weird, but to me, it's the most common thing. This is my brother, his best friend, and my mom and her best friend. This is just how we roll. This is called the pod, okay?
Give Them Lala. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues, 790 KBC. Good afternoon. Reacting to the breaking news this afternoon, the new homeless count for Los Angeles County has just been released. And according to that report, the number of homeless people across LA County dropped 4% this year, the second consecutive drop after years of steady increases, with a 10% decrease of people living in the streets, according to the annual count released today by the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. Crime and homelessness among the big issues facing businesses here in the Los Angeles area. Let's bring in former LA City Council member and longtime LAPD sergeant with 50-plus years of service to the City of Angels. Joining us live now, the Honorable Dennis ZINE is on the line. Once again, Dennis ZINE, thank you very much for taking the call here today.
Good afternoon, Frank. Happy to be with you.
Wonderful to have you with us. And refresh my memory, but I believe you participated in the homeless count or the homeless estimate this year. Give us your reaction to this latest news this afternoon.
Frank, I have participated in every single annual homeless count out there with fellow residents of Los Angeles, driving up and down in the dark in the areas that the grids that we have. I've done every single count. And I will tell you, honestly, you do it at night, you don't engage in conversations, and you guess how many are in that tent, how many in that motorhome. It is absolutely the most guessing situation you could ever come upon. So when they give these numbers, I really question the numbers. The residents of Los Angeles know how many homeless they see every single day. I drive down the street, I see homeless. I make a turn, I see homeless. The homeless have not gone away. While they say a 4% drop, if there is a 4% drop, I would question that number. But I know from my personal experience, the homeless count really is not a very scientific approach to determine how many are homeless in Los Angeles. And if any of the listeners participate in the homeless count, I encourage them to join in on a conversation with us to find out their perspective, because I've done every single one, and every single one I show the same thing. It is really not a very accurate count, if that.
And certainly homelessness at one time was primarily in the downtown Los Angeles area on Skid Row. Skid Row, by the way, is not just one street, but now about 60 blocks of the downtown Los Angeles area. Certainly there's homelessness in the valley and throughout Los Angeles County. Given your vast experience doing the count in the past, what are you seeing expanding to Westwood, West LA, of course, Venice, all over the place, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there are pockets where they've moved them. They moved them to different locations, but they're still very apparent. They're very involved in the community with all kinds of activities, whether they're defecating on public property or just lingering or lying on the sidewalk, as I saw driving down Ventura Boulevard. They're everywhere. So when they give this number, but think about how many, not millions, how many billions of dollars in the last number of years. Has it been 10 years? Has it been 15 years? Millions upon millions into the billions where we find this situation. And LASA, which we know was the organization that was responsible, that was disbanded because it was so ineffective. And Judge Carter, the judge overseeing this, is very frustrated because things aren't improving. So I really don't give a lot of credibility to the report that they come out saying that there's a 4% drop in the homeless population. And your listeners, as they travel around their communities, they will testify if there's any kind of drop, it's a drop in the bucket, and the bucket is empty. There's nothing in there.
All right, so it looks like the count now is down to 72,300 or so, and that number is still larger than the population of most cities in the United States, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 72,300. And they destroy neighborhoods. They destroy communities. And the welcome environment that we have with the weather conditions here, unlike the East Coast where they have inclement weather, this weather is very conducive. The beach details that we have with the LAPD and the other folks that work the beaches, in the summertime, it's a wonderful place to be homeless. So I really don't give a lot of credit. And they come out waving the flag and tooting the horn. Oh, look what a wonderful job we did. Those people who participated in the homeless count, I welcome them to come their perspective, because every single time I've seen the same thing. It's at night, and you can't do anything except guess how many are in a motorhome at tent or whatever the case may be. Very unscientific. So I don't give any credibility when they come up with these numbers and try and pound the drum. Oh, look what a wonderful job we did. All they're doing is wasting taxpayers' money. Not hundreds, not thousands, but billions and billions of dollars. And whether it's a Supreme Court ruling that you can't be homeless or the lack of enforcement, whatever it is, this situation is not going away anytime soon.
On the air live with the Honorable Dennis Zine on the line with us, former L.A. City Council member, longtime LAPD Sergeant, 50-plus years of service in the City of Angels, and certainly homelessness is a huge issue along with crime. And once again, downtown was the focus over the weekend with I'm just looking at the report here from ABC 7, a driver waving a machete near Crypto.com Arena was shot and injured by a Los Angeles police officer on Sunday morning. A crazy situation there where somebody got out of the car, it looks like, with a machete. What happened there, as far as you know?
Well, we have another situation where our officers confront an individual with a machete, driving in a reckless manner, get out with the machete, and starts coming towards the officers. The officers have two options. They can either retreat, and then the public's in more jeopardy, or they can engage. You're not going to engage an individual with a machete with your baton or your OC spray. You're going to engage with deadly force. You don't have many options, because someone has to stand up to that individual who's got the machete flailing around. Now, whether he's mentally ill or he's on drug, whatever the case may be, that is really not the issue. The issue is you have an individual who could start killing people with this very dangerous weapon, the machete, flailing it around. And they shot the individual. I understand he survived. But this is the kind of situation our police officers fall into. Not that they're looking for it, but this is what happens. When the public needs help, they call the police. The police respond, risking their lives to end that particular situation, which could have been a tragic situation for many citizens, whether they're walking down the street or driving a car. You can imagine a crazed man not only driving crazy in a car, but then getting out with a machete and charging at you, knowing you have a weapon, knowing you're a police officer, knowing you're in a police vehicle, charging at you. These officers had no option than to use deadly force in the situation. I understand the man did not die, but you don't have many options when a situation like that takes place.
Very serious situation. Well, we appreciate it. As always, the Honorable Dennis Zine, former L.A. City Council member and longtime LAPD Sergeant, 50-plus years of service and counting to the City of Angels. Dennis Zine, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Frank.
Thank you very much. And out to the freeways now, 790 KABC.
Jim Rome takes on sports.
Why?
because you're not playing me.
With rapid-fire takes
and a lot to get to, and I'm not sure you're going to like all of it. Honestly, I don't even care if you like all of it or not. I have a job to do.
Scorching debates.
On any given week, you have lots to beef about. Take advantage of it. Get up in here.
He's the Spitfire of sports smack.
She's not my fault. We will get to all of that.
The Jim Rome Show podcast.
Get up in here, and we'll beef later on. What's your beef?
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
You've been warned.
Mottek On Money continues. 790 KABC. President Trump giving total authorization, in his words, to federal immigration agents to protect themselves after a series of clashes with protesters here in California, including during enforcement raids on 2 Southern California cannabis farms. This as the Trump administration plans to appeal a Los Angeles federal judge's order last week, limiting the ability of federal agents to detain people without reasonable suspicion beyond their race, ethnicity, or occupation. Federal authorities confirming more than 300 illegal immigrants were arrested last week during an immigration and customs enforcement raid at a Ventura County cannabis farm. And according to the Homeland Security chief, the raid rescued 14 children from potential forced labor exploitation and trafficking. The raid believed to be the second largest single state ICE worksite operation in history, behind the first Trump administration's Mississippi chicken plant raids back in 2019 that saw about 700 illegal undocumented people arrested. Joining us live now is Ira Melman, spokesman with the Federation for American Immigration Reform, also known as FAIR. Ira Melman, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a while since we chatted behind live microphones. Give us your reaction to these latest actions.
Well, look, the administration has made a point of trying to clear the work spaces of people who are in the country illegally. And that is one of the prime reasons why we have immigration laws. It's to protect the interests of the American public, including their economic interests. And we have seen for years, and wasn't just under the Biden administration, but it goes way, way back, where you've had people coming into the country. You have these powerful business lobbyists who lobby the government not to enforce laws against hiring illegal aliens. And it has resulted in millions of jobs being taken away from American workers, or American workers being forced to earn less in order to compete with the illegal workers. Now we're seeing for the first time in a long time a really serious effort to go after the employers, to find the people who are working illegally and remove them from the country so that American workers can claim those jobs and claim better wages as well.
For years now, there's been talk about enforcing the I-9 form that you fill out when you take a job that proves that you're in the country legally, right, and that you're eligible to work in this country. Are you seeing more enforcement of that form nowadays?
Yes, there is more enforcement of that, but we need to upgrade that as well. Look, we live in the technological age. We electronically verify just about everything we do. There's no reason why we should be having employers check boxes on pieces of paper and file it away in a cabinet. We have the E-Verify system. It is voluntary. It should not be voluntary. It should be mandatory as part of the hiring process for everybody, regardless of your race, your ethnicity, your age, whatever. Everybody should go through the exact same process, much like we all go through the same process when we make a credit card purchase. The merchant doesn't just look at the credit card and say, yeah, that looks good to me. He runs a check and knows within seconds that we have the credit to buy whatever it is we want to buy. This is the kind of technology that would allow employers, number one, to safeguard themselves. That way they wouldn't be caught up in these raids. They would be indemnified against any mistakes. And second, to protect the interests of the American workers who, as I mentioned, are losing out on jobs and wages.
All right, now a lot of attention focused on agriculture and these raids here in California. What do you think is going to happen here now? Is there going to be some sort of a accommodation to allow people to work in the fields and not be subjected to these raids? As was noted, they apparently caught some wanted criminals during the latest raid here. What's your feeling on how this is going to evolve without destroying agriculture in California?
Well, look, I mean, agriculture does have to adjust. We cannot have carve-outs for different industries. They have been allowed for too long to get away with providing substandard wages, substandard working conditions, and then they claim they can't find anybody else to do the jobs except for illegal aliens. They need to accommodate themselves to the realities of the market. You pointed out that on that cannabis farm, you had children being working under exploitative conditions. That shouldn't be permitted in the country for anybody, and it goes on all the time. So we need to have enforcement. The employers need to either start using the guest worker programs that are available to them, pay higher wages, or invest in the mechanization that will make these agricultural industries much more efficient than they are right now.
Since you're the expert on all this, it's interesting how the unions have evolved on this issue where unions are advocating for undocumented, right? Tell us how we got to that point.
Well, I guess we passed some tipping point. You're right that early on, probably in the 1980s, 1990s, even into the early 2000s, the labor unions were saying, hey, this is undermining the interests of our workers. And nobody was listening to them. Nobody was enforcing the law. And it reached a point where in a lot of industries, you had so many people who were working illegally that the unions were saying, look, if we are going to have any meaning at all, we're going to have to represent somebody. And so we're going to represent the interests of the people who are doing these jobs. They just happen to be in the country illegally. So the unions basically sold out the interests of their membership, at least some of the unions, and now they're trying to remain relevant by representing the interests of illegal aliens. Look, we need unions in this country. Workers need to be protected. If we had a system that really advanced the interests of American workers would be back in those jobs, and the unions could represent them so that they can get fair contracts from their employers.
And the other important thing that's evolving is the federal government locking horns with sanctuary states and sanctuary cities. How do you see this play out?
Well, I think you see it play out every day on the streets of Los Angeles. Look, Tom Homan has said, if, you're not going to turn over criminals that wind up in the local lockup. If you're going to put them back out onto the street and back out into the community, we're going to do what we have to do. And that is go out there door to door, find people. And look, he has said, there are people who may not be on our radar scope. But if we're out looking for some bad guy that Los Angeles County refused to turn over to ICE, and we find somebody else who's in the country illegally, we're going to take that person as well. So, it's just basic common sense. Whether you're Los Angeles, the state of California, or some deep red state, the interest of the public is served by removing foreign criminals from the streets of your cities and towns. It makes no sense whatever for state and local governments to be protecting people who are not just criminals, but in the country illegally as well.
Ira Melman, spokesman for the Federation of American Immigration Reform, also known as FAIR. Thank you very much for joining us live here on 790 KABC. The stock market ending higher today with the NASDAQ at an all-time high of 55 points at 20,640. Bitcoin hitting a record high above 123,000 today. Right now it's cracked below 120K. We'll keep an eye on that and be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC.
Nightly Scroll with Haley Caronia.
Hello to all my homies in the chat. I'm Haley Caronia with some very inconvenient truths.
Your go-to place for the hottest button issues.
Don't you hate when facts get in the way of a good news story?
Cut through the noise and get ready to scroll through the chaos of the modern world, one hot take at a time.
Hear me out. We might need to spread this information 24/7. Let's get into some scrolling time.
Nightly Scroll with Haley Caronia.
I love this place.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.